Welcome back to the In Between podcast. Today's guest is someone who really understands what it means to start over multiple times in their life. Caroline is pretty much the most courageous woman I've met. She is the former CEO of Make-A-Wish Foundation. She has had several careers and had them all be very successful. And now she is an executive leadership coach and fractional C-level consultant. Her main goal is to help all sorts of leaders navigate challenges, build stronger teams, and create work that also aligns with their life. Something that Caroline taught me from this episode is how to be courageous and how to be okay with really deciding that something is or is not for you. Change is okay and it's still aligned with integrity. I am so inspired after this conversation with Caroline. She has sold everything in her life multiple times to make a difference and make a change that makes most sense for her life. And she recently did that, and we talk all about it in this episode. I would say this episode is a beautiful mix between leadership, courageous changes, and all the in-between moments. So join me for this conversation with Caroline. Welcome to the In Between podcast. I'm your host, Cassidy Owen, and I'm the founder of Cassidy Lynn Social, a social media management agency dedicated to helping brands find their authentic voice online. But more importantly, I'm someone who believes that the real magic happens in the messy middle, the in-between moments that shape who we become. Every week, I sit down with female founders, entrepreneurs, and incredible humans who are navigating growth, failure, and everything in between. So grab a nice coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into today's conversation. Hi, Caroline. Welcome to the In Between podcast. I'm so excited to have you on and talk about all your in-between moments because you've had a few.
Yes, I have.
And I feel like you just have so much wisdom to share with our audience. So I would love to start out this episode with you summarizing your life story and all the things that you've done and been through. And yeah, I'll let you have the mic.
Yeah, so I love that you are curious about the in-between because I feel like those are probably the most magical moments, even though sometimes they're hard. I've lived a really, interesting life in the sense that sometimes it feels average and then sometimes I reflect back and like, wow, I had these amazing experiences. My first real big in-between was probably when I graduated from college. College was a natural progression to go away to college. But my sister and I took 3 months and we drove around the country because we were curious about different parts of America. And I made a big decision to move to Las Vegas to follow a boy, no less.
It's the best thing to do in your 20s.
Why not? One of my mottos was, I don't want to ever say what if. Be curious and explore it so that you can find out what may or may not be. And it was a great move. Las Vegas was booming. It was 1994. MGM had just opened up and they were the world's largest hotel. And it was an opportunity to really get involved in a city that you could be the change. You could be involved. It was a small town with a very big feeling of a lot of excitement and activity. And it was probably one of my greatest moves. And I've met a lot of really good people. And I learned early on in my time in Vegas that I didn't want to be in the gaming industry. And I think everybody thinks because you're there, you're either in gaming or show business. And I ended up working for a man that was a political image maker, a publicist, a really prominent figure in Las Vegas, and he allowed me to cut my teeth on the city and really understand the inner workings and taught me the art of relationship building, which really has been the focus of my entire life. And there's nothing more valuable than relationships and how you nurture them, whether they're family or friends or colleagues, business associates. And then I took a departure after I left there and was introduced to the nonprofit sector. And at the time, I didn't even know that could be a career. Fundraising was kind of my passion, just advocating for really important causes. And so I got into the nonprofit world and quickly, learned a lot about the business and ended up in my first executive director role. I think I was 28 years old. And now I look back, I'm like, what a baby I was. I knew nothing. I think I shared this with you. On paper, I had no business being in that role. But I took a chance and the board took a chance on me and I worked hard and learned as much as I could and surrounded myself with really good people who just helped mentor me and be there when it felt scary and hard. And that really was the theme of my life. Take a chance, do something because people believe in you and believe in yourself. And when it feels really hard and scary, lean on those amazing people. And, not to use a nonprofit phrase, but I have my own personal board of directors. And they make up the people who I lean on for different reasons, whether they have a different experience in life that would help me or a different expertise, or they've been in different phases of my life. So that's been a real in-between for me, is finding those people and building those relationships and leaning on them.
Well, and you wrote that in your doc that I give you before the interview, that if you would give someone advice, it would be to have people and put yourself in those rooms. And I think that's just the wisest advice, because the reason that you and I are sitting in front of each other right now is because of great people, right? And you can learn so much, and truly for free. And then beyond that, get so much wisdom that you didn't have to get through life experience because you leaned on other people.
Yeah, connection is so powerful. They say it's at 6 degrees of separation in Las Vegas. It's like
maybe even
1
less
degree.
Than Vegas. Yeah.
It's really less in Vegas, but even as I transitioned and I relocated to Atlanta, I'm finding the degrees of separation are really small. And, if you're curious enough, you really figure things out, and you can discover different people and find those connections. That's the relationship and the connection. They kind of go hand in hand. And if you can connect with people, I think it's like the lifeline.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think it's probably, as you've already mentioned, a big reason that you've had the success in your career and you've been able to adapt to all these different career changes in different industries, is because you were able to lean on people to be like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to keep going, and how can I get through this? So as mentioned, you had a lot of career changes to the point of now even owning your own company and helping leaders. What do you think all of those different positions have taught you about being a leader?
I think finding my own style as a leader, and every position nurtured that. And I grew up trying to figure out what my leadership style was going to be, and not ever settling on this is the one way that I can be a leader, and be willing to change and evolve. So when I was leading in 28 years old at Aid for AIDS in Nevada, was very, very different from when I was leading an organization like Make-A-Wish. Fast forward 15 years later, I experienced so much more. I was more confident in who I was as a leader. And so I think that finding your style and always having those iterations of yourself are really important. Because if you just stay stuck in one version, you may never evolve and get to that place you really want to be. And I'm still learning. Even now in this role of having my own consulting firm, it's a whole different experience. And so now I have to kind of edit that version of myself. But I have no problem getting older and feeling wiser and more confident. It's got a different feel to it. But I think if I could share anything with someone that is younger, I would just say, always be open-minded and learn and grow and find that next version of yourself. It's fun.
I love that you used the word edit. It just resonates loudly, at least in my life, of you don't have to just be the same person all the time. You can edit, you can refine, you can grow wiser and learn new things and decide to change. And I think there's such permission in that when you say that, when you use that word, because I definitely think in your 20s, and I'm now just entering my 30s, you feel like you need to be a specific person. You need to go to work every day. You need to do all these specific things. And we're blessed to, at least in my generation, have a lot more access to being an entrepreneur or building a business, which is what I've been blessed to do. But even then, there's like a box that you sometimes feel like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, or should I be doing this or doing that? And the freedom to say like, well, what if I just edit it? What if I don't do it the same way either it's always been done or that I've been taught?
Yeah, I didn't learn that until I want to say in my late 40s when I got divorced. That was a big turning point for me, that I gave myself permission to change my mind. In my 20s and my 30s, I always dug into something. So if I said I was going to do something, I did it. Or if I believed in like, this is the path, I would like dig into it. And then, when my world got rocked by a divorce, I'm like, well, maybe I can change my mind. Maybe this is the time for me to think that there's something else that I can do differently. And I always was someone that was growing and learning, but I also dug into decisions that I made. And that freedom to say it's okay to change your mind is very liberating. I think that's important. You don't want to be changing your mind every day and like
Well, and it's interesting when you say that because I'm someone who has a very high sense of integrity. Like if I say I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. I started this podcast off of that, of like, I ran a marathon and I was like, I'm so pumped. I'm going to start a podcast off of it. Right. And there's been many evolutions of it. And sometimes I feel like that gets sticky for me of like, well, does changing my mind mean I am not aligned with the word and the meaning behind integrity? Or is there integrity in that decision as well?
Well, I think it's, why are you changing your mind? Are you changing your mind because it's too hard or you're scared and you don't want to pursue it anymore because you're afraid of the failure or whatever it might be? Or are you changing your mind because that journey has ended and there's something different for your heart and soul to explore? Or are you just being a flake? Are you just changing your mind because I don't feel like doing it anymore? I think there's all different versions of it. And when I talk about changing my mind, it's more of like a belief or a philosophy, or even letting some things go that, you hang on to it because you feel like you have to keep doing it. Someday I hope that, my business continues, but maybe I might explore something different and I'm okay with that, as long as I'm doing it for the right reasons and it's truly feeding my heart. And that's been a big learning experience for me as well, is like, how do I feel about something? A lot of times I get too much thinking, too analytical about it, or worried too much about what other people are going to say or think. And at the end of the day, I just need to check my body. Does this feel good to me? And that's really hard to do. That's what I did when I relocated to Atlanta. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I took a 3-month road trip. I had a little bit of a checklist because I'm a checklist person, but I also was looking for a feeling. And when I would show up in a city or a town, I was just, how do I feel? Can I live here? Does this feel good? And it felt good when I came to Alpharetta, Georgia, and I said, this is it. Like, I had no question, no doubt, everything unlocked, it all worked out, and it was a feeling. So trust your gut, and women are very intuitive, but sometimes we don't trust our intuition, or we're so busy and consumed that we're not connected to our intuition. And so slowing down and really getting connected to how you feel and that intuition is so powerful.
Yeah. And I think that's not often taught. At least in my 20s, I felt like I was never taught. You would say intuition and I'd be like, I don't know what that means. And now entering my 30s and like even my late 20s, I've been like, oh, wait, how I describe it is I'm like, wait, I was right about that. Did I predict that? And then I'm like, wait, there's power here, right? And I've had even friends in business, like things will have fallen off. And I've told them like there was this feeling like, I don't know, it was just not working. And now I'm starting to understand and be like, oh, wait, that's my intuition. How do you think you've learned and developed that relationship with your intuition? And like you mentioned, right, there was a feeling. And I think sometimes, given that we're probably not connected to our feminism side of us, how do you develop that? Like, how do you learn to know what that feeling is for you as an individual?
I think I'm still learning and still trying to find the stillness that allows me to connect and trust. And I think it's just believing. When you believe that your intuition is there to tell you something and help you, guide you, then you'll pay attention to it most. There's a little phrase that I have posted in my apartment. It says procrastination can be a form of intuition. And, there's different reasons why we procrastinate. We might procrastinate because we don't know how to do something. Or we might procrastinate because we just don't like it and don't want to do it. But we also might be procrastinating because our intuition's saying there's something else. There's something gnawing at me. I don't know what it is. And so sometimes that procrastination really is a form of intuition saying, I don't know if it's happened to you, but many times I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't start that because that went away. Like, that was really great on my part. But I also like to pay attention to the signs. I like to call them the winks from universe. They're there if we are paying attention. They're all around us. I've slowed down my life a lot since I started my own business because I have a little bit more control over my schedule and what I take on for work. But trying to maintain a slower pace is really hard to do in a fast-paced world. And so when we are running 100 miles an hour, when I was raising 2 kids and had a big career and all the things, it was a lot harder for me to be in touch with my intuition. And I think I completely was not even near attached to my intuition or aware of it. When I reflect back, there was definitely a lot of signs, but I just wasn't present enough. So some people like to journal, some people like to meditate. There's different ways that you can just slow down. And you say that the art of contemplation is dying. to sit there and contemplate is an awkward thing to do.
As you were speaking, I'm like, how often do you have the opportunity to be quiet without actually seeking it, right? And especially if you had babies and you were in a busy career. I mean, let's face it, if you don't seek that, you're not going to find it. And I think exactly what you said, it's interesting because being in that time of my life where I've been busy and go, 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 and like we're working, we're doing this and owning my own business, I've had to actively choose what you're saying to slow down. And like, oh, I can choose my schedule. I can choose to take a walk while the world is going on and doing their 9 to 5. And when you do that and you spend more time in those quiet spaces, it's just like working out. You build that muscle, you build that voice in your head. But it is very hard to choose to do that. And that's the greatest reason to do it.
Yeah. And when you talk about in between, a lot of times we think of like the big moments in between. But what's in between in your day? I block out space. I literally put the word space on my calendar in between meetings so that I don't go back to back to back. Now, sometimes you do, it happens. But if I did that every single day, I'd be completely drained and miserable. And so my in between is space, and I schedule it, because if you don't schedule it, something else will show up on there. Focus on what you do in between sleep and waking up, and in between waking up and starting your day. That's an in between. I used to hit the ground running, right? Jump up and like literally begin the day. And now I get slow mornings that I protect with a kung fu grip. And when I say slow mornings, it's like 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours of just entering my day. That's a luxury. I know it's a total luxury because when you have kids, small kids, you're raising kids, you don't always get that. But even if you could get 10 minutes where it's a in between, you waking up and the day starting, and build on that, I think it's really important. I think it's so powerful throughout the day to be able to have those moments where you go for a walk or you just sit and do nothing. It's a discipline and it's hard.
It is a discipline, especially as you mentioned, like we're in a world where everything is go, go, go. And there's a narrative that like the person who's working the hardest, that's up at 4 a.m. and doing more than you are, is going to make it farther. And I think we are at the cusp of unraveling it. And especially women are like, not for us. That's not actually how that works. And the people who are doing less are actually probably producing more because they have the capacity. And I want to talk a little bit about your nonprofit work, because in my business, I'm in social media and I run a handful of nonprofit social medias, and I've learned a lot about that industry. It's beautiful, 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 but it's hard work. It's really, really hard work, from funding to getting the word out there to just running a team on the funds that you do have. I guess your evolution in nonprofit work, how did you maintain that passion? And how is it jumping from such different causes in your experience? Was that hard to go from A to B?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it was hard. The cause was important to me, but it wasn't number one. I know that sounds weird, but I really wanted to make a difference behind the scenes. I really wanted to focus on the mechanics of the organization so that you could have a better output. Very early on, when I took my first executive director job, I just thought it was weird that nonprofits didn't think like a for-profit and didn't operate that way. And I went back and got my MBA because I was like, I'm in this industry and I want to know more about business, and had some very lively conversations with my cohort. Majority of them were in for-profit businesses. I think it was just myself and one other that was part of an association. And we would have very interesting conversations because the expectation of a nonprofit was very different of an expectation of a business, meaning you don't get to allocate the marketing dollars. You don't get to hire the number of people that you really need to operate the organization. You have this cap on your administrative, which is like this demonic overhead that is so bad when you really need it in order for the organization to expand and grow. And I remember just always turning around and going, would you do that with your business? And they'd go, oh, no. Like as if I was repulsing them with the concept. But the expectation on the nonprofits there to do things that you would never do in the for-profit world. And I think we're kind of at a disadvantage right out of the gate by labeling it nonprofit. Like, don't succeed. Don't have a profit. Like, profit is bad. I ran all my organizations and we were always at a profit. What did I do with that profit? put it into a rainy day fund. I put it into reinvesting in things that were important. We're going to move the needle on the mission. But I never operated every year going, I'm just going to be not profit and operate in the red, not succeed. That just didn't work for me. So I think if we can change the mentality and the narrative around what nonprofits are allowed to do by standards of ancient times, then we're going to have a much better, elevated, successful nonprofit sector. The nonprofits are not growing at the size of the need. The need is getting bigger and bigger. The gap's getting bigger and bigger, but the nonprofits are not catching up with that. And so I've always been in the business because I believe in the organizations needing to have a different mindset to operate successfully. You know, the missions were always great, but I always tell people, if you want to get into the nonprofit sector, don't do it because you want to feel good. Do it because you want to use your skill to advance the mission and elevate the capacity of the organization. There's almost a little too much heart in the business. We need a lot more minds that are going to be okay with making difficult decisions, okay with saying no because you can't be everything to everyone. And in the nonprofit sector, you've got the altruistic person that wants to help everyone in any way possible. That's not sustainable. That's not going to move the needle on the nonprofit sector. We need good people that are going to be leaders. They're going to be strategic. They're going to have a big vision for where the organizations need to go and then take the risk and implement that. And that's not typical in the nonprofit sector. And we need more of that.
Wow, that's powerful. And just pointing out the word nonprofit like blew my mind because you're so right. And that narrative is being fed into any time you talk about the organization just simply because of the name. It's almost a double-edged sword because you're trying to make so much impact, but you're being told it's bad to essentially save, right? Like you want to be proud to give all of it, but that's just not how any business can run. And at the end of the day, a nonprofit is a business.
Yes, it is. It's a social sector business. We're in the business of helping people. And why should that be stifled in any way? I mean, to do good and to attract excellent leaders and pay them what they're worth so that they stay in the business instead of having a revolving door or somebody that just doesn't have the capacity to do the job. You're wasting money anyway, doing it that way. I mean, a revolving door is spending money, which is not totally on a line item, but you lose productivity, you lose momentum in where you're going, you're advertising, you're spending time interviewing. Like there's a cost to not hiring the right people and then keeping them in place. And there's also a cost to hiring the wrong person and keeping them there because you don't want to let them go or you can't afford to have somebody that's going to elevate. So there's all kinds of people challenges in the nonprofit sector because we're afraid of the scrutiny that we're going to get when you pay people what they're worth.
You eventually made your way up to a CEO role of Make-A-Wish, and they're obviously a larger nonprofit. What did that role teach you moving into the CEO seat of a nonprofit?
Well, that was my favorite role, I think, if I were to pick a favorite, because I was very confident that my experience was going to be able to take the chapter to the next level. You know, Make-A-Wish is a big brand. Everybody knew Make-A-Wish, but nobody knew that there was a chapter in Southern Nevada. And the number of kids we were granting wishes to was significantly lower than the kids that were eligible for it. So I'm a fixer. I like to go in and fix things and make them better. I'm not a sustainer, and I've learned that in leadership. You know, you got to learn what kind of leader you want to be, what phase of the organization your leadership style is going to work well in, and I'm definitely the fixer. You know, I like to get in there and make changes and do things differently and see that change evolve, and Make-A-Wish was in that situation, and it was a time for me to really walk the walk, talk the talk, do all the things, and really put some of my ideas into fruition, like just to make them happen. And it was great. I learned a lot. It was 7 years. And one of the things that I did differently, and it took me a couple years to get my sea legs underneath me, but when I elevated my leadership team, when I put a leadership team in place that was better than me in certain ways, that we could holistically, as a leadership team, function really well and make good decisions for the organization, it changed everything. So I'm a big believer in surrounding yourself with really strong people that enhance you. You don't want to be, the same people same style, same approach. You want to have that diversity in how people do things, how they think, their perspective on whatever their career path has brought into the workplace. So that was a big game changer for me, and it stuck with me because I saw the difference between having a leadership team that I thought was a leadership team but very junior versus a leadership team that came in and were much more experienced, and elevating that was one of the best decisions I made. Made my life easier.
Yeah. Well, I have to personally thank you because I actually have attended a Make-A-Wish because my brother, he unfortunately passed away from leukemia, but we, about a year before he passed away, went and were granted a Make-A-Wish from Make-A-Wish Southern Nevada.
What was his wish?
We went to New York City and we got to meet the Knicks and Carmelo Anthony. He was a basketball player before he was diagnosed. He was 15 when he was diagnosed. And I clearly remember and was so excited when Rhiannon connected us because I clearly remember like the whole process and just like everything from like the limo picking you up to like we felt like superstars, let alone I can't imagine how my brother felt. But it's truly an organization that like is doing incredible things from someone who's been on a trip and been through the entire process, watching my brother get granted his wish. And I can't even imagine your feeling like going in knowing like we could make more of these wishes for kids, right? Like there is a number of kids who are not granted these wishes. How can we grow that impact? Like that is just mind-blowing to me as someone who's been on one, because I know in no capacity was it a small trip, right? Like everything is bigger and better, and to be able to be connected and to see these people and sit sidelined and like all these different aspects of what we experienced from the wish being granted, that has to come from someone. And a lot of people are doing that work to allow all of that to happen. And so I commend you for the work you do, because in real time, being able to experience it, it's incredible. I mean, it's one of my family's most favorite memories. Obviously, there's a lot of bad memories during the time he was sick, but to be able to look back on all of that and know he was so happy, it just makes us happy. And you're impacting so much more than the child.
Oh, yes. Yes. I'm so happy to hear that, you've had that experience. Not that, I want anybody to have that experience like that, but the whole point of the wish is to give the child and the family hope, also to create a memory during a really difficult time that is special and meaningful and, changes lives for long after the wish experience is over, and it never ends, which is amazing.
And yeah, that's the part of it. It had to be, I want to say maybe 2014, 2015.
Yeah, because that wish sounds familiar to me.
Yeah, I'll have to send you some photos. He was diagnosed at 15. He passed when he was 18. So it was so funny because we'd always walk into the clinic and he was like a full grown man, obviously, right? And all these kids are like little and tiny, and he's walking in there like 6'3", full beard. And so I think the wish in itself was probably on a larger scale than just like Disney World. But I mean, the Knicks really did go above and beyond, and like we had such an incredible time. But I think now looking back, and obviously, of course, I would never want anyone to just be focused on the memory, but it is so beneficial, and like it just gives me hope that I have that memory in a time that was so sad and so much pain and so much hurt. It's like I can't look at that trip and associate it with the pain and the hurt. I can only look at it and associate it with hope and family and fun and all of those. And it's like, how many memories do you really get when you're going through an illness like that, where it is so naturally negative and painful and sad, to then have an organization step in that's like, well, let's change that. Let's have this week, couple days of a memory that's different. And I just think that's beyond any gift you could ever give, is the memory and the feeling outside of all the glamour and the fun that you guys had provided.
Yeah, we prescribe hope. It's not something that is ever taken for granted. The experience is life-changing, not just for the families, for the wish kid and the families, but the people who work at Make-A-Wish, the people who volunteer, and they come back over and over again because it's that feeling and that experience that you get to change a person's life, many people's lives. So yeah, it's a pretty special organization. A lot of people will ask me, like when they hear Make-A-Wish, they might say, oh, it's so sad. And I said, there were moments where we felt sad, especially if we lost a wish kid. But most of the time it was exciting. We were happy to be able to be these messengers of hope and joy and making the wish come true. And, the wish reveal process was just in itself always another experience, never mind the wish, but that was the experience that we could really connect with the wish kids and deliver this message that their wish was coming true. So we kind of get the good side of kids going through these illnesses. We get to come in and be the delivery of hope. And I couldn't do it on the medical side. When I would go and visit some of the centers, I don't know how nurses and doctors do it. I really don't.
Especially as a mom, yeah. And it's interesting you say that because I interviewed last season the current CEO of Ronald McDonald House of Greater Las Vegas. And she was saying something very similar of a lot of times, especially as she's talking to donors, this has got to be so sad. She said the same thing you did. There are so many happy, positive moments. She was even just getting a parent and a child who are sleeping on a hospital bed and on a chair that's all the hospital offers, to then getting them a room where they have a bed and they can sleep and they have a little kitchen. Just that in itself is so positive, no matter what they're experiencing. And yes, a lot of them are experiencing really, really horrible things, but it's that perspective. And it's something that I do love about working with nonprofits, because for some reason, the people who are in the industry can always find the positive. And I think it's got to be part of what attracts people. You have to be able to change that mindset, because you could focus on all these horrible, horrible things that you're hearing every day and seeing, or you can choose to find the positive and focus on that.
Yeah, it's those moments that keep you going, because it's pretty heavy. Emotionally and mentally, sometimes physically, it's pretty heavy. It's not an easy sector to work in. I think that's why I get a little bit more frustrated as well about, people can't just be in it for the passion and the heart. We've got to take care of people who are working in that sector. Just like we got to take care of our nurses. The work that they're doing is unbelievable. And I have friends that are nurses, and it's hard work. And so, I really want to see people that are working in the nonprofit world just be better cared for. Their well-being matters, because it's draining work when you're giving and giving and giving all day long, and you're seeing things that are hard to process and understand why they're happening. That's mentally and emotionally draining. And so we've got to be able to lift up and nurture people that are working in the sector, because it's always more. It's never enough, never enough. There's more to do. And that just drains your soul.
Well, it leads to burnout.
Yeah, it leads to burnout. Totally leads to burnout. And then there's that revolving door that you can't get people to stay in the work because it's too hard.
You mentioned burnout, and you've had quite the in-between over the last couple of years. As you mentioned, divorce, moving, and reinventing yourself by founding your own consulting firm. What has this current season of in-betweens taught you?
This most recent one?
Yeah.
It's taught me that I'm a pretty courageous person. And one of the things that I just never really connected with is when people would call me fearless leader, because I think everybody's got some fears, especially when you're in a leadership role. It's heavy, it's lonely up top, and it can be really heavy. But I think this in-between has taught me, or has showcased, that I'm a pretty courageous person. To leave a city that I've been living in for 28 years with a beautiful network of people, and to come into a place that I know no one, I think that takes courage. And I think to start your own business takes courage, and to explore new ideas and even a new version of myself is, I think, all just being courageous and trying, and try to silence the little voice that tells you it's not going to happen, or you shouldn't do it, or whatever it is. But yeah, I think this in between has been probably my hardest and my most significant.
That is beyond beautiful, because how courageous is it to have lived all of this life, to know, to expect, like you mentioned, your community, Las Vegas, and to have the confidence and the courage to choose differently and try something new for what is going to best serve you now. And it had to have a little fear in it, right? I don't think anything is fearless I know what it feels like to start a business in my 20s, but to be honest, I feel that it might be more scary in my midlife years. So I think courageous is a great word to describe you, because when I read your story, like, that's what I see.
I think back to how I got to Georgia, it was right after COVID. So right after COVID, when the world opened back up, that's the after COVID I'm talking about. I kind of went and did the same thing. I bought a house, I got a new job, and it was feeling really stuck. And so the part that I still kind of look back and go, wow, I can't believe I did that. I sold my house, everything in it. I reduced my life down to literally 6 boxes and gave myself a year to travel and explore and figure out where I'm going to go. And that was fun and liberating and super scary at the same time. I remember driving in my car and at one point started crying, going, what did I just do? And then I'd have to call one of my people on my board of directors, and they're like, remember what you're doing. This is awesome. And I'm like, okay, yes, this is good. But there was moments of fear, and, to just liberate myself of things and responsibilities that I didn't need to have. That was a big part of this unearthing, was this, what am I hanging on to with this purge of my life? It was a purge. Things that I didn't need to do, things I didn't need to hold on to, things in general. And so I went from living in a 2,500 square foot home to an apartment that's 825 square feet. And I'm just as happy, if not happier, because I've got less to think about, less noise around me, and I don't ever want to have the garage that's full of shit. I don't ever want that again. I don't want the storage unit that needs to hold things that I don't need every day. Like, I want to use the things that I need, use them daily, enjoy them, and focus on the experiences that are outside of accumulating stuff.
I love that. And I love that you were able to discover that and have courage to do it. So when you talk about your board of directors, how do you go about deciding who is a board of director? Like, what are the qualifications, and have they changed over the years?
Oh, yeah, they've changed in the sense that I really look at the way they live their life, and that matters to me because I don't want to take advice from someone that is not living aligned with their own core values or living in a way that doesn't align. You don't have to have the same values, but live the same type of life where you make decisions, you're kind to people, you're thoughtful, you've got experiences that will teach me, not only you, but teach me what not to do, or kind of the cautionary tale, if you will. And so I think it's really about how they're showing up in life. And is it someone that I respect and appreciate their perspective and like the way that they're living their life? I think it's that simple. There's a saying, and I can't remember how it goes, but it's like, don't take advice from somebody that either hasn't lived it or doesn't have that experience, or they're not living their life the way that they should be, or still kind of trying to figure all of that out. It's a feeling too, to connect with somebody. There's a lot of really great people, but if you don't connect with them, it doesn't matter.
I loved that you said that it's more so about if they're living in alignment with their values versus they're living how you want to live. Because I think a lot of people look for role models and they're like, oh, I want that house. I want to drive that car. I want to have that life. And you're approaching it in, I think, the smarter way of like, it's not about what they have or who they are or what they do, but do they say what they're going to do and follow in line with integrity and values? Because that's the kind of human I want to be and what I want to do. And I think the benefit of a board of directors would be to have a bunch of different opinions that might not always align with yours, but give you different ways to think and broaden your perspective.
Yeah, and sometimes we don't see our own gifts or our own specialness, our own potential. And so when you have people who genuinely see you and genuinely know you, that's pretty special to have that around. We all need that.
We all need someone to remind us who we are and how great we are.
Yeah, especially when it's hard, when you're going through it and, you're just having a bad day or a bad week, or, you can't get out of your head. I've got people I call and just say that. Can't get out of my head. And getting out of your head means sometimes you have to process what it is that you're feeling and thinking, and to almost lessen the power. But when it ruminates in your head, it just stays there, and then it gets worse and the story gets bigger, and it's just bad. That's what I love about coaching, is just the power of communicating and voicing something gives you that clarity. because you've just said it out loud. And a lot of times people get to their own conclusion, they get to their own solution. That's happened to me all the time. Like, oh, I just said this out loud. I mean, I see the solution.
It's interesting because I just saw a quote the other day on Instagram, and they're like, the best coaches don't tell you what to do. They ask a billion questions until you know what you want to do. And I was cracking up because I was like, my coach does that. And I always say to her, like, don't ask me another question. Like, I get annoyed by it. But it is true because a good coach knows you already have the answers. You're just afraid to look at them.
I like to have the blend of two because I'm a solver. I have to control that too. I have to taper that back because I'm like, oh, I see the solution. Just do this. Sometimes you need to offer up solutions because you really don't know. And so you're going to sit there stuck because you don't have the solution or you can't clear the cobwebs to figure it out. So somebody might plant something and say, well, have you ever thought about doing this? And they may not do that exact thing, but it might spur an idea to go, oh, well, I didn't think about doing this, but I might do that. So I think sometimes I get annoyed by too many questions too. I like to riff some solutions as well, at least for me. You know, I'm thinking of doing this, but this could happen, whatever. Just having some dialogue around what the solutions might be or the choices you have to do something different so that you can change your behavior, take different action, and hopefully have some different results. But sometimes you just got to try different things. And if you don't know what they are and you don't have those, then I know everything's within, but sometimes we got to excavate it out a little differently.
Well, and like you said, you sometimes just keep making the same mistakes. They might not be mistakes, but you're just stuck in a pattern loop because, and I'm a fixer too, like I'm down here and I haven't looked up in years. And to ask someone else and see another opinion, and then it's like, oh wait, why didn't I try that? Or why didn't I think about it that way? But it was just never in your little corner of the world when your head's down trying to focus, trying to build something. So I would love to hear, because you've been through so many phases of in-betweens, and let's face it, we're going to go through more. If someone's in an in-between right now in their life and they're unsure of where to go or what to do next, what would you want them to hear?
I would want them to hear that there's really no wrong decision. There's no wrong move. You know, you can make a decision, and if you feel like it's aligned with where you want to go, and getting that clarity is so important. Like just getting to the root of what you want, what you desire. And sometimes it's hard to get to that clarity. Like I feel like I'm still searching. I feel like I'm still trying to get clarity, and that's okay. But now I'm looking at it as, well, I guess that's the fun of life. I love meeting people who have had like 3, 4 very different careers. I feel like my career is pretty aligned. Like they're not so different. I might have worked with different companies, but in the nonprofit world, in the community, like it's pretty aligned. I love it when I hear somebody say like, well, I was a hairdresser and then I went and, you know, I was an executive in marketing, like in just these totally different careers. So I think it's just, don't be afraid to try something new and go for it.
Have courage.
Yeah, have courage. And as long as you're not hurting anybody along the way or devastating your life, if it works, it works. If it doesn't, reset and try something different, try something new. And sometimes that need for perfection, I know I struggle with it. You know, it prevents us from just doing because it's got to be perfect before we execute on it. You'll never get there and then you'll never execute. So if you're in the in-between, do what your heart tells you to do and just like go for it. Just try.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I feel like I'm selfishly gaining so much wisdom from this conversation. I'm excited to listen back to it. And thank you for choosing courage and in your own life's path, because I know it's hard, but I think so many people that you don't even know have watched your life unfold and are now going to hear your story via at least my podcast and be encouraged to do the same and get curious and be courageous. So I just want to acknowledge you for that. And thank you for joining me today and allowing me to interview you.
Thank you. I love your curiosity. So keep nurturing that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining the In-Between podcast, and we'll catch you next time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this conversation gave you exactly what you needed to hear, whether that's permission to slow down, motivation to keep going, or just a reminder that you're not alone in the in-between moments. Now, if you're a female founder or a value-driven brand looking to build meaningful connections on social media, I'd love to work with you. At Cassidy Lynn Social, we help brands express their authentic voice through strategy-driven social media management. Head to CassidyLynnSocial.com to learn more about how we can work together. And if you've loved this episode, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Screenshot it and tag me on Instagram at Cassidy Lynn Social. And if you're going through your own in-between moment right now, keep showing up. The growth is happening even when you can't see it. I'll see you next week for another in-between conversation.